Welcome back to the podcast. This is, of course, the China Stories. I'm Michael Rice, and I'm here in Beijing, China. And I had quite a revelation the other day. I think that the CCP virus has turned me into a liberal, and Dave Rubin can prove it. Yeah, that's right. I've become a liberal. At least that's the way it appears. And so to prove it, I've decided to go ahead and play something that really kind of had an effect on me. I was listening to, illegally here in China, I was using my VPN to get outside the Great Firewall and listen to some YouTube videos, which is almost always a mistake. But the day this happened, it wasn't. I happen to follow Dave Rubin on YouTube. I find Dave to be an interesting person, not because we agree on too many things, but because I find his point of view to be honest and compelling. Also, he's got a great interview style where he actually listens more than he talks, which is something I could really learn. So I try to follow him as much as I can. And I ran across this. He was going to interview a YouTuber called Tommy Sotomayor, and he went ahead and gave his 5-minute intro. In that intro, he talks about a lot of things, some of which I agree with and some of which I don't, but what he does more than anything else is talk about tolerance. I'd like to play that for you now. I'm going to stop a couple of times and give you my thoughts on what's been said so far, and then I'll give you a quick wrap-up. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report. You can catch it on YouTube in pieces and in full episodes. It's a pretty amazing show.
One criticism that I hear occasionally is that I'm actually not a real liberal and I'm secretly a conservative. Or sometimes they'll say I'm the only thing worse than a conservative, a dreaded right-winger. Now, it is true that I've been saying for months that defending my liberal principles is now a conservative position. But am I still a liberal? Do I still believe any of the things that people on the left believe? Well, since we have so many new subscribers around here, I thought I'd lay out some of my liberal cred for you in case you missed it.
I want you to listen closely to the next part, because what Dave does is list off a few of those things which we consider typically liberal, and yet at the same time, I'm not so sure I don't share those values. I'll talk about the ones I do and the ones I don't after this is done, but maybe you should make a list. Get yourself a pencil, get yourself a piece of paper, jot down the things you agree, put a little check mark next to them. See what you think about what Dave Rubin thinks is liberal, because it's really interesting when you start to analyze what you think and what most other people think.
I'm so for gay marriage that I even married a guy. I'm pro-choice, I'm against the death penalty, I'm for a social safety net, I'm for a strong public education system, I'm for legalizing marijuana, I'm for reforming our prison system, and I'm against unnecessary wars and nation building. There's other stuff too, but I'm pretty sure I just made my point right there.
That was pretty rapid fire, so I'll try to keep it short. Gay marriage, I don't care. On top of which, I don't understand why, and even if you do believe there's a God, that you believe that it's okay to be intolerant and to persecute, and I do mean persecute, those people who live an alternative lifestyle. Pro-choice, I don't have a problem with people being allowed to choose. I am, however, conservative enough to say that I don't think the government should pay for it, and I would never be a party to it myself. Against the death penalty? Yeah, I don't think the state should ever have the power to take the life of its own citizens. I think there are other ways to solve that problem, even if it costs us money. Social safety net. Who doesn't believe in Social Security? You pay into it, you get it back. We give a certain amount of that money to people who can't earn money, and that's the way it works. Now, the way we're spending it is stupid. We'd have a lot more if we made it possible for everybody to go back to work, or everybody who could work to go back to work. Public education? Duh. Who doesn't want public education? I do think that we need to remove the politics from public education. I do think we need to remove the agendas from public education. We're not required to teach certain things that we're teaching now, i.e., tolerance, and I don't think that should come from the the government. I think that should come from parents. Legal marijuana, whatever. I Washington State has legal marijuana, and so I bought some of those little lemon lozenge THC things, and I would take them before bed. And I did it for a while, and it was okay. It was no big deal. I think there are people who abuse drugs. There will always be people who abuse drugs, and that's a different problem than legalizing marijuana. Reform the prisons? Yes, again, shouldn't we be reforming the prisons? Shouldn't they be humane? Shouldn't we be actually looking to make it a place where they are rehabilitated like we talk about? Yeah, I think so. And unnecessary wars? I think pretty much every soldier on the planet would agree that they don't want to be in an unnecessary war, and that we fight wars for some really stupid reasons. So, do I agree with Dave? These are the opinions I've pretty much held my entire life. So, I'm wondering if Dave's needle is shifting or if my needle is shifting. Let's take a listen and find out what more he's got to say.
Beyond any of those specific issues, though, I'm for true tolerance of opinion and thought. My liberalism is one of a live and let live attitude. This, of course, is where I diverge from the modern left. I see virtually no diversity of thought or tolerance of other opinions on the left today, just constant smearing and slandering of all intellectual opponents. Take a step back for a moment and think about your friends on the left. Are they tolerant of people who aren't for gay marriage or of people who are pro-life? These used to be just political differences, and now they are somehow a referendum on what type of person you are and whether you can be in someone's life at all. I wish this intolerance was an isolated case, but not only have I seen this type of intolerance firsthand in my life, but I hear it from you guys every single day. I get emails about marriages breaking up, lifelong friends no longer talking to each other, and people afraid to say what they think politically because of repercussions it'll have at work.
So I think that Dave has really touched on the meat of his actual statement right here. It's tolerance. Open discourse, not making people afraid to say what they want to say. It's not like the far left is afraid to say what they want to say. So, are you tolerant? I try to be. I find myself, however, being very intolerant of people who are intolerant. I hate the haters, as they say. I find it very interesting that Dave is directly addressing the actual problem that exists in the world today. It's not that people have crazy opinions. It's not that people don't have crazy opinions. It's that people are afraid to speak their minds. Let's continue.
And by the way, now let me reverse that. Do you know people on the right who are tolerant of people who are for gay marriage and who are pro-choice? I actually do, plenty of them, including several people who I've had on this show. When there's a disagreement, I see way more people on the right, conservatives or libertarians, more often willing to agree to disagree rather than to defriend or to smear. Could the right be better? Are there real bigots on the right? Absolutely. And are there real racists on the right? Yes, of course, without question. But by and large, these aren't the voices from the mainstream right anymore. Let's not forget, even Donald Trump got a standing ovation at the Republican National Convention when he talked about protecting LGBTQ rights. Of course, all this said, it doesn't mean that things are all right with the right now. Just in the last few weeks, Tomi Lahren was let go by the Blaze after she came out as being pro-choice, or at the very least giving a conservative explanation for abortion by saying that the government should stay out of a woman's private life. I actually agree with her rationalization here and know that that position upsets a lot of conservatives. The immediate reaction to her comments and her subsequent firing strike me as the same intolerance we're used to seeing from the left these days, not from the right. And for the record, I've invited Tomi on the show, and I've invited Glenn Beck back on the show to discuss what went down between them. I hope that'll happen. I happen to like both of them, and we all of us, have views that are inconsistent with our broader ideologies. We're not robots just yet, we're still human. Oh, and yes, by the way, it is Glenn's right as a private businessman to hire and fire people as he sees fit, even if I don't agree with the reason why he did it.
I find it interesting that the whole walkaway movement has been about people on the left discovering that people on the left, the far left, are unbelievably intolerant. I can remember my father telling me that the liberals were the real racists, and I thought, gosh, what is he talking about? That's just crazy talk. And at the time, of course, I was young, and I thought I knew more than my father. I'm not so sure now. I'm not even sure my father was conservative. I think my father was just thoughtful. Anyway, the point is that this whole Tomi Lahren thing and getting fired because basically she defended the idea, using her conservative mindset, that the government needs to stay out of abortions, that she doesn't think they shouldn't exist because they will exist. It's like saying people won't drink. Prohibition didn't work. Banning abortions won't work. At some point, somebody's going to need or want one, and that decision needs to be left up to them. Again, my personal belief is that I would never be a party to it, and I don't believe it's responsible behavior to have sex and then use the ability to receive an abortion just because you can. That isn't as common as people might think, but it happens, and it happens because the system is set up not to, in fact, hold people accountable and make them responsible for their behavior. All of that said, let's continue, because he's absolutely right about the right. We have a tendency to be a little bit intolerant sometimes. Not more so than anybody else, but it's something we need to keep an eye on. Now, I say we, again, assuming that I'm still conservative. I don't think I'll ever get away from conservative thought, but I certainly believe there are things in a society for which we are all responsible. And if you want to call that socialism, then you're an idiot. But gay marriage and pro-choice and against the death penalty and social safety net and public education and maybe legal marijuana, I don't even care about that. Reform prisons and the elimination of unnecessary wars. I'm right there, brother. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to let Dave finish up, and then I'll have a few comments for you at the end. Pretty interesting, huh?
You know, another area which I don't fit into the traditional political box is gun control. I absolutely believe in the Second Amendment, and obviously also believe that a healthy distrust of the government is an important and key part of being an American. Democrats often make it sound like Republicans want every American wandering the streets with a weapon like we're in the old Wild West. And Republicans often make it sound like every Democrat wants to take away their right to self-defense. As for me, I believe that we have the right to bear arms, but also we have to keep these weapons out of the hands of the wrong people, and perhaps even more importantly, have a real discussion about mental health, which usually has more to do with these shootings than the weapon itself. As always, I'll keep talking about free speech, free expression, and the rights of the individual, which I believe to be the most important facets of a truly free society. Whether that makes me a libtard or a cuckservative or a right-wing maniac is for the commenters to decide.
Did you take notes? Did you figure out? Are you liberal? Are you as conservative as you thought you were? You know, there was that stupid political compass test that that basically puts you on a graph and asks you to ask questions that are so flat and so one-dimensional that you have to say yes or no to, or maybe, or whatever. If you know what you're reading, then you know that there's only a couple ways you can answer a question, and you have to work that out in your head. And maybe that's the reason that they're as general as they are, because there are a lot of permutations to being a human being living in the world, let alone living in the United States, where the price you pay for freedom is very often so complicated that nobody has the answer. And I'd still rather have that than to have been raised here in China. Again, I want to point out, it has nothing to do with the Chinese people. It has to do with the CCP. And everybody who out there on the web and everybody out there in the world that says the Chinese are suck and whatever else, that's just absolute nonsense. The Chinese people don't suck. The CCP sucks. And they're living under a horrifying regime that does horrifying things every day. In the United States, we have a lot of greatness. Dave Rubin has me asking the question, are these values, were they ever conservative? Or were they ever liberal? Who doesn't want some of these things? Once again, that list is gay marriage, pro-choice, against the death penalty, social safety net, public education system, legal marijuana, I don't know why that makes me laugh, reform prisons, and, of course, unnecessary wars. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to know where you stand on these issues. So many people are calling Dave names, for heaven's sakes. Why are they calling him names? Everything he said, at least to me, is common sense. We need the truly free society he describes. That's the promise of America. All right, it's time to put an end to this. I've spoken too much already. Thanks for joining me. You've been listening to the China Stories with Michael Rice. I'm here in Beijing. Follow me on Podbean, YouTube, and Facebook. And you might want to catch my Instagram, Mike Rice in China, one word. Everybody, to quote Lawrence Fox, the world is wondrous wide. And as I always say, always be courageous and kind. And we'll see you next time.